Botswana's president, Duma Boko, just said something that is spreading across the internet faster than almost anything an African leader has said in years. It was not a carefully worded diplomatic statement designed to offend no one. It was direct, sharp, and uncomfortable for a lot of people in power. And the line that has everyone talking is simple: Africa will rule the world. He did not whisper it. He did not qualify it. He said it forcefully and without apology, and told anyone who doubted him to just watch. To understand why those words hit so hard, you have to understand the moment Africa is in right now. This is not the Africa of 20 years ago, where leaders stayed quiet, accepted the terms handed to them by foreign institutions, and called it partnership. Something is shifting. Citizens are more informed, young people are angrier and more organized, and leaders who are willing to speak honestly are finding massive audiences ready to listen. Boko laid out his reasoning clearly. Africa is the youngest continent on Earth. The average age of an African is 19 years and 3 months. That is not a problem. That is the single greatest competitive advantage any region of the world possesses right now. While Europe and Asia are aging, while their workforces are shrinking, Africa is producing millions of young, energetic, educated people every single year. Every other continent on Earth would trade almost anything to have that demographic reality. Africa has it naturally and for free. But then Boko did something that took real courage. He stopped talking about Africa's potential and started talking about Africa's failure to use it. He pointed directly at the resource curse, the painful and embarrassing reality that Africa sits on more natural wealth than almost anywhere else on the planet, and yet its people remain among the poorest in the world. Gold, diamonds, oil, cobalt, cocoa, rare earth minerals that power the entire global technology industry. All of it here, all of it being dug up, shipped out raw, processed somewhere else, and sold back to Africans as finished products at prices Africans can barely afford. He said plainly that the infrastructure built across much of this continent was never built for African people. It was built to move resources from the ground to the port as fast as possible. That is not development. That is organized extraction with better paperwork. And then he turned his attention to the people in the room, the leaders themselves. He told them directly that the people they serve want results, and they want them now. Not in 5 years, not after the next election cycle, now. He said the job of a leader is to identify everything that is slowing down progress and remove it immediately. No delays, no excuses, no hiding behind process. The people have waited long enough, and the leaders who keep making them wait are failing them. This kind of language from a head of state is unusual. Most leaders speak in carefully managed sentences designed not to upset anyone. Boko was not managing anyone's feelings. He was saying what millions of ordinary Africans have been saying to each other for decades, but could never get their leaders to say publicly. To understand fully why this moment matters, it helps to go back to the beginning. Africa's poverty is not an accident, and it is not a reflection of anything lacking in African people or African culture. It was constructed over centuries with great deliberate effort. When European powers arrived on this continent, they did not come to help. They came because they could see clearly what was here: land, minerals, rivers, forests, and people. Organized, intelligent, cultured people. And they decided all of it belonged to them. They drew borders across the continent that had nothing to do with existing kingdoms, languages, or family ties. They installed leaders who answered to Europe rather than to Africa. They built roads and railways that connected mines to ports and nothing else. They called it civilization. They called it the gift of progress. But a gift that makes the giver richer and the receiver poorer every single year is not a gift. It is a system. When independence came, when the flags changed and the speeches were made and the world applauded, many people believed the chapter was finally closed. It was not. The buildings stayed. The borders stayed. The currencies in many countries stayed tied to European central banks. The trade agreements stayed in place. Agreements that guaranteed African raw materials would keep flowing out and manufactured goods would keep flowing back in. And then came the debt. Country after country borrowed money from international institutions, and received it with conditions attached. Cut your public spending, sell off your government companies, open your markets to foreign competition. And governments that were desperate and fragile signed those agreements. Public hospitals fell apart. Local industries that could not compete with cheaper imported goods collapsed. Unemployment grew, and the debt never seemed to shrink, no matter how much was paid back. That is not assistance. That is a mechanism designed to maintain dependency. France ran a particularly direct version of this arrangement in 14 African countries through a currency called the CFA franc, which was tied to the French treasury. Those governments could not fully control their own money, could not fully set their own interest rates, and were required to keep a significant share of their foreign reserves sitting in France. This was not ancient history. People alive today grew up under this arrangement. And when African leaders stood up and challenged it, they were labeled unstable or dangerous. Some were sanctioned, some were removed from power. Thomas Sankara was assassinated. Patrice Lumumba was killed. Muammar Gaddafi was destroyed. Every single time an African leader said clearly that this continent's resources must serve this continent's people first, enormous pressure came down on them fast. That is not coincidence. That is a pattern, and patterns reveal intention. But here is what is genuinely different right now. The generation coming of age on this continent grew up with the internet. They can look at the cobalt being mined in the Congo and look at the price of a smartphone battery and work out the mathematics themselves. They can see the oil in Nigeria and see the poverty in the communities sitting above those oil fields and ask the obvious question without needing anyone to prompt them. This generation is not confused. They are not waiting for a professor to explain the situation to them. They already understand it. They are angry and they are organized, and they are no longer willing to be patient about demands for a better deal. And now they have leaders speaking their language. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso stood up and said things out loud that African leaders simply did not say in public before him. He named the systems. He pointed at the arrangements. He expelled foreign military forces from his soil. He told the world that Burkina Faso's resources would serve Burkina Faso's people. The Western media called him dangerous and destabilizing. But the young people of Burkina Faso understood the difference between a leader who is dangerous to the people and a leader who is dangerous to the arrangement that was keeping the people poor. Those are very different things. Now Duma Boko of Botswana, a country with a long reputation for stability and measured governance, is standing up and saying the same things in the language of a seasoned statesman. He is saying Africa must stop exporting raw materials and start processing them at home. He is saying the infrastructure of extraction must be replaced by the infrastructure of production. He is saying that Africa's young people are not a burden to be managed, but an economic force that the rest of the world simply cannot match. And he is saying that African leaders must act now, because the people they serve have already waited far too long. When the revolutionary captain and the democratic president are standing in different parts of the continent, pointing at the same problem and demanding the same solution, something significant is happening. It means the conversation has moved. What powerful people used to be able to dismiss as radical fringe politics is now the mainstream position of African governance. The consensus is forming, and it is forming fast. Expect pushback. The systems and the people that benefit from Africa staying exactly as it is will not accept this quietly. They will use media to question these leaders. They will use financial pressure to slow things down. They will talk about democracy and human rights, not because they suddenly care about African citizens, but because undermining the leadership is the fastest way to protect the old arrangement. Being informed enough to recognize that tactic when it appears is part of what this moment is asking of ordinary Africans. But also expect progress, because the logic is now undeniable. You cannot stay poor while sitting on the wealth of the world. The only reason it lasted this long is because the leadership kept accepting terms that were never written for the benefit of African people. That is changing, slowly, then all at once.